be better tomorrow because of what you do today. My name is Brent, and welcome to the Fallible Man Podcast, your home for all things man, husband, and father. We provide content to help men become the men they want to be. Today, we're talking about masculinity and relationships with the host of the Not Most People podcast, Bradley Roth. Bradley, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Now, I write things down, but it gets pretty nuts. So just go where the wind takes you, man. I want to enjoy this with you. But tell our listeners, I'm a horrible podcast host because I don't actually introduce my guests anymore. Because I get all this time before the show to do my research and look you up and find out all about you. But accolades don't mean anything to most people anymore. So tell us, who is Bradley Roth and why are you here today?
Yeah, that's a good question. Who am I? I always struggle with that question because I think a lot of people define themselves by what they do. Like what I do is who I am. And I try to not look at it that way. I've done a lot of different things. I started out in the fitness industry, post-college, growing up, health, fitness, working out. That was basically who I was, what I knew, what I was good at. I didn't really have any skill sets or big interests beyond that. So in some ways, I think I was kind of one-dimensional for a long time. And then one way or another kind of got exposed to different things along the way in my early 20s, needed another job to kind of complement what I was doing at the gym. And that led me to real estate and network marketing and kind of all these different experiences that, weren't the long-term answer for me, but helped, or they became stepping stones and learning experiences along the way to kind of like indirectly guide me to where I am now. So, who I am now, I would say I'm a much more well-rounded person. My biggest value, my number one value is freedom. And so everything I do is kind of based towards creating freedom in my life. So whether that's financial freedom, location freedom, time freedom, freedom in the patriotic American freedom sense, all that stuff. So that's kind of a big guiding principle for me. I'm infinitely curious. I enjoy learning about just about anything and everything. And I think what I strive to be known for at some point is to be known, I guess, for your wisdom, if that makes sense, to be respected. I don't really care about the big, like you said, accolades and kind of being Insta famous and all that stuff that you see so much today. So yeah, it's hard to answer that question in like one or two sentences if you really think about it and give it what it's worth. Because there's so many dimensions to every single person. But I'm excited to be on this podcast because masculinity, kind of also talking about that, like health, fitness, one-dimensional person to where I am now. A huge part of that shift, especially in my relationship with my fiance, was really learning or relearning what masculinity was, probably like in the last couple of years, and the impact it's made on myself and even just sharing it with others has been huge. So I don't know if that really answers your question exactly, but
it's it's a really difficult question to answer.
It's about as open-ended as it gets.
Right. I was on a podcast not long ago and got asked a similar question. And it was like, oh, so this is what it feels like to be on this end of that question. Got it. Yep. So no, you did a really great job of answering the question. And like I said, it's one of those that I do research before the show, right? You're a fellow podcaster. And I mean, you look up your guest, you do your research on them, and you get to find out that you're talking to just some incredible people who are normal, everyday people who refuse to be just normal every day, as it's broadly defined. And I do all this research. I was looking on your Facebook at some of your lifting pictures. It's like, I'm a gym rat. I like to lift. And I was looking at some of your lifting. It's like, man, this guy loves to work out. That's awesome. But it just doesn't capture people, right? Because you're right. We're the sum of all of our experiences, but we're not necessarily what we do for a living. We're not whatever our trade is. I worked in the electrical field for a long time. That really just doesn't even begin to define who I am. So,
right.
It's fair play because I've gotten stuck with that question myself. And it's like, I'm not sure there's a perfect answer. But everybody kind of, oh, when I ask that.
Well, it's a great question because it'll tell you so much about someone, kind of where they choose to start with that question and how they choose to answer it. And I think a lot of people, like I said, will say, oh, this is what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that can be kind of dangerous because there's a lot of people who tie their identities to what they do. And then what if they get cut loose, or what if something changes? You know, it's like the pro athlete, or like the pro athlete who retires and they're like, who the heck am I?
Right?
Yeah.
Men really specifically struggle with identity being based on our professions, right? That is just, we are so programmed to provide and to, you know, I don't even know how to say that well. We're just so programmed that what we do becomes who we are. That becomes our identifier. And the minute you see it when men retire, how many men struggle with retirement?
Right. Because, midlife crisis.
Yeah. Right. They no longer have a direction. They don't have a mission anymore because they've completed that aspect. It's like you either find a new mission when you retire or you end up dying. I've spent a lot of my life working around older people, and I've seen so many struggle. One of the gentlemen I work with, where I work my 9-to-5 job, retired after 25 years with the company, right? 3 months. It took 3 months. He's now the part-time janitor at the facility I work at because he needed something to do. So it's completely fair. So I was reading your website and I pulled this quote off your website, and I want to make sure I read it right here. I want to shift people's thinking about success, wealth, and happiness. I seek to do that by waking people up to the fact that most people are not very happy, healthy, or wealthy. So why would you want to live, think, and be like most people? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah. So I guess growing up, I didn't realize it at the time. This is, again, one of those things I didn't really become self-aware of until more recently. But growing up, I was very curious. I was also very logic driven. So anytime, like in school, or my parents would say, like, this is the rule, or this is the way things are, I'd always be like, why is that the way it is? And so I kind of naturally question things, and the common answer of because we say so, or because that's what people say, was never like satisfactory for me. And so I always grew up kind of questioning, like, why are we learning this in school? Like I was in college for strength and conditioning, and they made me take accounting, and I'm like, why is this relevant? Just like little things like that. Or in high school, I went to a private high school, and they had this rule, like if you got caught with your cell phone, it was like 5 hours of detention. And I'm like, why is that a rule? And so some of these things just naturally caused me to like question things. And then as I got into, working at the gym post college, and then, like I said, these other things, kind of diving into a little bit more personal development, and I started reading books and consuming videos and content of people who I consider to be successful. I found that everything that these super successful people said was very different, or in a lot of cases, the opposite of what I had been told by everyone growing up, or what society at large kind of says. And so that made me sit back and think, why are these guys who are where I want to be saying all this different stuff? And I know all these people, and some people close to me who followed the quote unquote, the right steps, go to school, get your degree, get a career, and live happily ever after. Right. And it just didn't add up. It didn't match up for me. And so I started to realize that, okay, maybe everything I've kind of been told, or that the majority of society says is true, maybe that's not the case. Why are these people in that small percentage getting these different results? Oh, it's because they're doing really different things than what most people are doing. And so I just started to see this like direct correlation. And, I think that quote was just kind of word for word my logical thought process behind that. Like, this just, it doesn't make sense. And so that was kind of the inspiration for, not most people. There's two parts to it. It's that success side, and then that's that unconventional or different side, or thinking for yourself. And if it's like a Venn diagram, that crossover in the middle, that's not most people, because I find that the success and then the being different oftentimes are really one and the same. And so that's just kind of how it all came about. I can't remember exactly the moment when the term "not most people" came to me to kind of sum it all up, my thoughts around that. But, since then, that's, I found myself kind of proving that theory more and more the more I see and learn and meet people.
So you work with people to help them create the intimate relationships with their spouse that they really would like to have, that all of us would like to have, right? Let's be honest about that. Tell us a little bit about your work there.
Yeah, so it's a couple of things kind of happen at once. So sorry, is my video kind of being funky?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what's going on. But so I started this podcast, and I started about 6 months ago, almost today. And leading up to it, I said, I'm going to do this podcast. And it was interesting. Like I said, I kind of bounced around through some different things. I jumped headfirst in entrepreneurship, start my own business, like with zero experience, zero backup plan. And that was probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I got into marketing services because it was something that you could kind of teach yourself, get into without spending a ton of, startup costs and that sort of thing. So I got into that, and I kind of pivoted a couple of times within there. I was doing social media, then Facebook ads, and then more stuff with like chatbots. And during that time, it was okay. I was learning a lot. I was like, I'm working for myself, but it wasn't really like fulfilling. It wasn't like the thing. I kind of knew that long-term where I wanted to be was more in the personal development and coaching space. I just didn't know where yet. And so I came up with the idea for the podcast. I started the podcast, and the original plan was to do that on the side, just a couple hours a week, which we know, you guys know, run a podcast. That's not the case. There's a lot more involved. And I was like, I'm going to do that on the side. I'm going to continue my marketing business, even though it was really kind of like, I don't know, just really draining energy. Didn't feel quite aligned, but that was the plan. And then I launched the podcast and got a lot of really good feedback early on. I found it was giving me energy. I found myself spending more and more time and energy on that, and less, and feeling less drive towards kind of the marketing business. And I think I was very hesitant to kind of switch gears, because I had it in my mind that, if I quit this business, like I'm a failure, like I failed, which obviously, as we know, most entrepreneurs have a whole bunch of failures before they really hit it big. So that was just something I need to kind of figure out or get over myself, because I was telling myself, I have to see this through. I have to like sell this business, and then I can go into the coaching space like I really, really want to. Because during the last few years, like I said, all this personal development, I kind of knew in my gut that that's where I wanted to be. I really geek out on like psychology and communication dynamics and all that stuff, and understanding behavior. And so I knew I was going to do something with that. I just didn't know when or exactly what. And so I launched a podcast, and even though the podcast isn't directly related to my relationship coaching, there is some overlap. And I found, and I've heard from some people that I really trust and respect, that you can do two things at the same time, but not if they're totally separate. Only if there's some overlap. Otherwise, you're spread too thin, and your attention is too divided. So a couple months into the podcast, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to follow my gut and go into coaching sooner rather than later. Like, why wait if I know that's where I'm going to be? And so I kind of had to trust my gut instead of my brain and my logic, like I typically did. And so I made that jump, or that transition. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of quote unquote life coaches out there. And I learned from marketing that you got to niche down, at least initially. And so I was like, I don't want to just be another Instagram bio life coach. And I didn't have the success in business yet that I felt like, okay, I can go coach business, even though I could do some things with that. But I had the health background, the health and fitness background. So I said, okay, I could do that. Or, what I'm really kind of passionate about and where I really see a huge gap and a need is in the relationship space. And, we've been together, me and my fiance, over 6 years now. And, she's a nurse. She kind of has that stable, steady income. And I've been over here saying, oh, give me 6 months and, we'll be good. And, 6 months comes by and, it's never quite the timeline that you expect, especially when you're new and you don't have realistic expectations to, starting a business. And so there's a lot of kind of tension there. And so a lot of learning experiences along the way. And I found, in the last couple of years, actually, once I started to really dive into kind of understanding these masculine and feminine dynamics, that our relationship really jumped to a whole nother level. And I started to see that, wow, like all these people that I'm seeing, all the stuff that they're dealing with, like we've been through that. We got through that. I learned about it and I can help other people with that. And I also, like I said, everyone I know is kind of an entrepreneur. That's who I'm passionate about spending my time with. And I know that there's some really unique challenges that come along with being an entrepreneur in a long-term relationship. And so I wanted to kind of I was like, that's who I can help. That's who I want to help. And that's what I'm good at and who I understand. And so that's kind of how I decided to get into that. And, most of it's communication. That's a huge part of it. I would say the second pillar is understanding those masculine and feminine dynamics that I wish I knew 5 years ago instead of 2 years ago. And, it's really exciting seeing all these light bulb moments, like people having them and like, oh my gosh, like my whole life I've been going through like 40, 50 years and I've never heard that before. And, I'm blessed that I kind of came across a lot of this stuff in my 20s. And, obviously I wish it was sooner, but I'm still at that point where I know I can help a lot of people with it and kind of like not most people dispel a lot of these things that society has taught us about relationships that aren't necessarily true.
Well, I can tell you, my wife and I celebrated our 20th anniversary this year.
Oh, congratulations.
And if you ever actually stop learning, I screw things up all the time. I'm a wrecking ball. So
we all do. Yeah.
If you ever actually get to a point in your relationship where you're not learning something, then something there is broken itself, right?
Yeah.
After 20 years together, I'm still not getting it right all the time and still making mistakes and still learning new things about how to interact with my wife and how to communicate with her and how not to communicate with her, usually by pain points. So, it's an ever growing experience and it's a great field to be in, right? Marriages are struggling and, I run a small business. I have a full-time 9-to-5 job, right? So I work 40 to 50 hours a week normally in my 9-to-5 IT job. And I do all this on the side. The podcast is part of what I do. So, just going the entrepreneurial route and that being your main focus without having something else you're doing at the same time is just, man, it's
there's a lot
crazy.
of uncertainty.
Oh yeah. I can only imagine what kind of stress that puts. I teased my wife the other day. I came home from work. She's like, you okay? I said, oh yeah, you know what? I'm just done with it. I hate it. I'm done with it. I quit. We're just going to do the podcast full time. And the look on her face was not, ha 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 ha, that's funny. It was turn your butt around and go back to work and get your job back. Right. So in our conversations before the podcast, you define masculinity like this. Masculinity is not an appearance or a look like most people think it is, but rather an energy or a wave of being. A way of being. It's being focused, driven, unshakable, and solid, mentally, physically, and emotionally. We're going to get into that, but first we're going to roll to our sponsor, and we'll be right back with more from Bradley Roth.
Today's episode brought to you by thefallibleman.com. That's right, it's us. Head over to www.thefallibleman.com and check out our blog, updated twice a week with new content, and links to all of our social media offerings. Tag or search us at The Fallible Man or at Fallible Man on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and other social medias for daily content. While you're there, check out our attitude swag, shirts, cups, stickers, and more. Again, that's www.thefallibleman.com.
Guys, welcome back. We're here with Bradley Roth discussing masculinity and relationships. Bradley, in the last year, what is one thing under $100 that you have purchased that has had the most significant impact on your life?
Ooh, it's a great question. Maybe this giant water bottle that I got. It's like a gallon water bottle. I drink it every day. And, it's one of those super simple things, hydration, but otherwise I never do. And, energy levels, mood, there it is. I got the same one. Yep.
On Amazon. I love this water bottle. I just got it.
Look at that. Great minds think alike.
I found myself struggling with, I had a bigger water bottle and it finally just wore out. And so I had my little 24-ounce one. It was just taking it back and forth with me. Mm-hmm. I started just like, did I fill that up? How many times did I fill that up today?
Yeah.
Did I fill it up enough? This is great. I can just fill it up at the beginning of the day, right? And look at it and go, I need to drink more.
I'm 2 hours behind. Yeah.
That's so funny that you that's what stuck out for you, because
I'm like, man, what do I use every day that's real simple? And that's what came to mind.
Well, people pick on gym rats because we like to carry around our big heavy water bottles with us, but at least we're getting hydrated, right?
Very true. Especially out here in Arizona, it's real easy to.
I can only imagine the dehydration you guys deal with out there. Mm-hmm. I'm in Eastern Washington and it gets warm here, but nothing like Arizona.
Yeah, for sure.
Scottsdale's up towards the mountains a little bit, right? So you guys aren't quite as hot as Phoenix. Is that correct?
No, we're pretty much just as hot as Phoenix.
So yeah,
we're 2 minutes from the Phoenix border.
I have a coworker who actually used to live in Scottsdale, and he tells me all the time, he's like, oh, it's up in the mountains. It's a lot cooler. It's not like everywhere else in Arizona. I'm going to have to call his bluff. Be like, yeah, I was just on with Scottsdale. And he's calling you a liar, man.
Interesting. Yeah.
So as a relationship coach, walk us through the role of masculinity, or that masculinity plays in a relationship dynamics.
So I would say that both masculine and feminine, neither of them exist in a vacuum or independently. It's really more about the balance between them than one side or the other, if that makes sense. So the way I like to think about it is, it's on a spectrum. Let me see if I have a little drawing here. Yeah. Actually, this is funny. I was using this recently. So there's a spectrum here, right? One side is masculine, far masculine. One side's far extreme feminine. And then there's this middle point, this balance point. And you need polarity in a relationship. That's what creates the attraction, right? Just like magnets. If you have two positive magnets, they're not going to attract. But if you have opposite, they're going to attract. And the stronger they are magnetized either way, the stronger they're going to attract. And so you need that natural balance of masculine and feminine. And ideally, in a perfect world, they balance out into the middle. And a lot of times, you can have, it's not about male, female, right? Masculine, feminine. There's a kind of a general correlation, but it's not always exact, right? And so you can have a very masculine female and a kind of more feminine energy man, and they might balance out. And that's, it's not that uncommon. Even in same-sex couples, usually one is more masculine, one's more feminine, right? And so you need that balance to be in the middle. And we all have a natural kind of set point. So let's say as a guy, my natural set point is 3/4 towards the masculine side. And, my partner is right here. But if you get thrown off your natural set point, or you don't know how to be that person, what happens is your partner will kind of try to compensate for you. So for example, my fiance, she is an ER nurse and she's a team leader in the ER. And so that's a very kind of naturally masculine role where, you take charge, let's go, no messing around, that sort of thing. And so it can be really hard to kind of turn that off when you get home, right? And so you bring that home, and everyone has, like I said, that natural set point. And you're always moving, you're always dynamic, you're always balancing. So like one day, like if sometimes the dude just needs a shoulder to cry on, and then, so let's say my fiance becomes that shoulder to cry on, and you kind of switch roles, switch energies for a little bit, but you switch back. It's when you get switched off your natural set point for a long time, things start to get rocky, right? Or if one person is on their natural set point, the other person shifts over, and then you got two masculine energies, and then they're butting heads. So it's all about kind of this constantly moving dynamic and balance and polarity. And so, there's a lot of talk these days about, I think like modern society kind of in general, right? There's a lot more women who are working, who are kind of taking, or even as an entrepreneur, taking on this kind of masculine energy, this masculine role. And you bring that home, and then you have say the man also is like a masculine energy, or you got two entrepreneurs, you got two kind of like alpha type personalities. There's going to be some clashing, right? There's not that balance. Or a lot of times you hear this all the time, like, where are all the masculine men, right? This is something that we could get into, but a lot of men these days don't understand what that means, and they try to be a pleaser. Now, there's nothing wrong with like pleasing your woman, making her happy, right? Like, obviously we want that, but it's when you become kind of passive and wishy-washy and defer and that sort of thing, and kind of put it on her to make decisions. And that was something that I was really not good at for a long time, something that I misunderstood. And kind of like the whole nice guy syndrome, right? For a lot of years, I was like, yeah, I'm a nice guy. Why are girls attracted to the quote unquote assholes, or whatever you want to call it? And a lot of times it's because when you defer and you are passive, like, you're not stepping into that masculine role like your woman wants you to. And so like something real simple, like as an example that we all hear about is, oh, where do you want to go eat? Oh, I don't know. Where do you want to go eat? It's like, oh, if I let her decide, that'll make her happy. I want to let her decide. But what she really wants is for you, she may not like whatever you choose, but she wants you to choose and make a choice and make a decision and be kind of a leader and solid and sure of yourself, as opposed to like kind of putting it off onto her. So I know I kind of like threw a whole bunch of stuff in there, but hopefully that kind of ties together and makes sense in a way for the most part.
No, it's absolutely fine. So I follow like Tim Ferriss and stuff like that on YouTube, and people who are very successful, right? Because if you want to be successful at something, you study people who are successful at it and see, what. And he's very big into, don't ask open-ended questions because you don't want to waste people's time, or, especially as you get people who are in demand and stuff like that. It's like, no, the open-ended questions are really where we need to kind of spend some time, because that's where discussions are. I don't need that concrete, right? You were talking about how people come home and they have this all day, and sometimes they bring home that energy. It's funny enough, and it's the weird example jumped in my head is, actually one of the biggest clientele of like BDSM type homes in big cities is high successful business people, because they don't want to take that home. They are powerful and successful and, putting the hammer down all day long. Yep. And they come home and they just want to go, whew, and they can't do that. So they get into these fantasies, right? You ask an electrician,
like this extreme feminine situation. Yeah. To balance. Yeah.
You go to an electrician's house, you're going to find all the wiring a mess. And you go to a plumber's house, you're going to find the whole place just jacked up when it comes to plumbing. We all want to take a break from what we do for a living. So if you're in that, whether you're a male or a female, you're in that high power situation, or you're an entrepreneur or whatever, right? You're the driving force, a team lead. You just want to come home and take that shirt off and be you, right? I think that's actually where a lot of men struggle with coming home in the relationship and having that, no, whatever you want to do, right? I make decisions all day at my job. And so when my wife asks, like, where do you want to go for dinner? I don't actually care. It's not even a passive, I'm trying to please her. Like, I truly just don't care at that point. I've made decisions all day.
Yep.
Figuring out what's for dinner or figuring out where we're going is the last thing I actually care about. Because I have to make decisions all day that have multi-million-dollar consequences sometimes.
Yep.
And so, we come home and just go, nope, we're here, we're chill. As men, it's something we got to really work on, is coming home and not just unplugging as soon as we get home. Yeah. We need that downtime to unplug. That's where we get our peace from. That's how we de-stress. But we have to answer the call and come home and help take care of the kids if we got kids, and help take care of the house if we got stuff to take care of at the house, and help our spouses or whatever before we get to unplug. We can't just come home and disconnect. That's where you get a lot of the absentee fathers and husbands. And it's an absolutely fair question and answer. I love the answer.
Yeah, it's a balancing act, right? Like because you get those people who come home and they kind of super unplug, right? Mm-hmm. And they go the complete, from super masculine to more feminine role. Mm-hmm. And then you have the others who never know how to turn it off. And they come home and they're still that hard charger, no emotional flexibility and that sort of thing. And so it's kind of finding that middle ground. And obviously a lot of it depends again on your partner. Is your partner kind of naturally more feminine or maybe a little more masculine? And then you kind of have to understand that, and when you need to be the mirror to that and that opposite. But yeah, like you said, one thing that's really interesting is a lot of guys that come home and they crack a beer, right? That's kind of, at least stereotypically, a lot of guys do that. Yeah, that's
the image.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things, because you think, beer, dudes drink beer, masculine. And it's no, actually, you drink a beer, you're doing it to kind of decompress and let loose and almost get yourself more into that relaxed feminine state.
Yep.
And so it's kind of people are drinking beer is a masculine thing. Well, actually, in a lot of ways, it's the opposite. It's kind of trying to decompress from that constant masculine frame that a lot of guys maintain at work and stuff.
Is that so that brings up an interesting question. Is that need to decompress actually masculine or feminine, or is that almost because it's a shared emotion, right? A lot of women come home and they need to unplug as well for a little while. Mm-hmm. So is that more almost kind of a benign middle to just, it's one thing to crack that beer and be completely passive about everything. It's another thing to crack that beer and decompress, right? Mm-hmm. Because that can be masculine or feminine. Men and women both have that emotion and that need to unplug. Some people want to come home and have a glass of wine or a shot of whiskey. Some people want to come home and just, right? They want to go read for an hour and decompress that way. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure that that's actually, if that's not just benign, that need to unplug. It's how you act after you start to unplug, I think. Mm-hmm. It really becomes
and how far you unplug.
Right. Yeah. There's a difference between decompressing a little bit and just popping out of the situation, and I don't know. It's a hard line. I know it's really difficult for me to find that middle ground between making decisions and being in charge and coming home and totally unplugging and just be whatever. Right.
Yeah.
I know I struggle with that middle ground of where is decompressing stop and just me checking out.
Yeah, it's a very individual thing, right? Because like I said, everyone kind of has that set point along the spectrum on where they kind of naturally are. And if you're, I would say my natural set point is not all the way at the end of masculine. I'm somewhere kind of in the middle of the masculine spectrum, right? And so the further off you have to kind of push yourself at work or whatever, the more you have to kind of decompress to get back to it. Right. And so a female, again, my fiance, for example, has to take on this very masculine role at work. And so that's way off her natural set point. And so that sometimes requires a little bit more just vegging out and watching TV to get back to normal. Right. Or she'll work 3 12s in a row. And after that, it's she needs a day or two to kind of get back to that set point. So it's a very individual thing. And you kind of have to start to kind of notice and become aware of it and where you are, and also kind of what your work setting is. Mm-hmm. There's some people, there's some dudes who work a job where they don't really have to be a decision maker. And so then they need something when they get home to kind of like they're going to go hit weights or something like that to kind of push them more the other way. So it goes both ways. It's not always a decompression. And sometimes it's like, I haven't gotten enough of that kind of structure and focus and charge, hard charging. And so you almost have to add that in. And so it's never like an absolute. It's very different for everyone. It depends totally on your situation.
And of course, here's the question that all the men listening to this podcast right now want to know is your fiance going to kick your butt when she hears you using it as your example on this podcast?
She might try. No, that's
Are you going to be in the doghouse for this one?
We're both like pretty kind of open. Like she knows that she kind of has this role at work that
right
puts her in that kind of mode of being in order to be effective at her job, right? Like she has a team of guys, girls, all these different personalities. Like someone comes in and like they're dying. Like she knows that take charge mentality is, it's something she's great at. She excels at her job, but
that's saving
but
lives.
It definitely
right
like has its toll, like she comes home and just some days she's just emotionally exhausted and a little burnt out and that sort of thing. So she's aware of it. So if she listens to this, I don't think she'll get too mad, but that reminds me of something else though. Like, is she going to kick your butt? And she tries a lot. And it's because women are always testing your masculinity, like whether they realize it or not. And so like she'll, kind of jokingly like charge at me or try to tackle me or whatever. And it's mainly to see like if I'm solid. And 9 times out of 10, she bounces off me. She's a little spitfire and I'm a little bit bigger, right? But she's always kind of like checking to see like, oh, okay, like is he strong, right? Is he solid? Does he stand his ground? And that's kind of like, whether it's conscious or not, that's something that a feminine woman is always kind of checking with her man. And I don't know if you've experienced this kind of the same way, but there's always that kind of like little bit of testing going on.
Well, it's funny because you have the whole dad bod trend thing, right? That to me is a hideous concept. But you, in the last couple of years, you've seen that whole, and I keep seeing more and more women be like, "Oh, well, I like it." No, you don't.
No, you don't.
No, you don't. Okay, you may say you like that, but at the end of the day, sure, you may not want your guy to be just like crazy over the top, dominant masculine. And there is a point where you have to, masculinity brings with it a sense of control of yourself, right? Being masculine doesn't mean I need to suppress anybody else if I'm comfortable in my masculinity. But at the end of the day, most women still want a male who can stand his ground and be physically capable, right? Just because your spouse or your girlfriend or your wife or however you want to say it is capable of taking care of herself doesn't mean that she wants to have to if the situation gets strange or hairy, right?
Yep.
So now I just have to tease you a little bit because I've had some guys say some things on here. It's like, you're gonna be in the doghouse when she hears this because no, I understand my wife is feisty, so
yeah.
She wants me to be able to stand my ground. She also wants me to not be a dick. So,
Right.
Yes, I'm talking about you, dear.
Yeah. No, I hear that. Yeah. I think being a dick and again, getting into this whole toxic masculinity thing that's going on. It's like, I think toxic masculinity, they try and paint it as this over masculinity, whereas it's really a lack of true masculinity, right?
Totally agree with you.
Yeah, and it's kind of this, I don't know if we want to go down the rabbit hole or not, but it's kind of like when you say those two words together enough, people start to associate them, and it's kind of the subtle programming, right? And so, it's one of those things that if you don't understand it, you are going to think, oh, toxic masculinity is an over masculinity, so masculinity must be bad. And it's like, no, toxic masculinity is a total lack of masculinity. Because like you said, if you're strong in your masculinity, you're present, you are secure in yourself. And so you don't have those negative or harmful behaviors towards others if you're really kind of correct with yourself and your masculinity. Well, if that makes sense.
It always cracks me up when people talk about this because, right, if it was toxic, people don't want to be around that. But you find a quote unquote what people would call a hyper masculine man. They are never lacking for being surrounded by women. Ever.
For sure.
And it doesn't even have to be like a player, right? Where like the whole bunch of girls you see it on Instagram, this guy with like 7 girls at the club or some crap like that. I'm surrounded by women, right? I'm married. I have 2 daughters. I have 7 nieces. I have my wife's friends around me. My mom lives with me. I'm surrounded by women all the time. And never once has it crossed my mind to try and be overtly suppressing or push them back. I got 2 little daughters, man. I want them to be successful. I want the world for them and at their feet. But I also want a guy who knows how to treat them, who knows how to provide and protect, whether they need it or not. And as a father, my job is to make sure they don't need it, but they can take care of themselves, but they shouldn't have to. Right? It is that balance. And for those of you on the podcast as we're talking, he was talking about a line earlier as an example. I know you can't see the video. Okay. So, there's a line, right? And one side is masculine and one side is feminine. You got to find that mix in the middle where you guys complement each other. But yeah, no, it's funny because you never see a lack of feminine company for a truly masculine person, because masculinity doesn't need to suppress femininity for it to be successful or to be good. But you frequently see guys who are, and I don't want to use the term beta males because I think that term is stereotypically used in a really bad way. Too
general,
yeah. But it's the lack of the masculine qualities where you see guys who are intimidated by women and so they lash out and treat them badly or feel displaced by them. And so I think it's a really unhealthy dynamic that they call toxic masculinity, but rating all men, all masculinity is bad because a couple guys are jerks or incomplete, right? You wouldn't say all cattle are bad because that one got mad cow disease.
Right.
Right. That guy is a rapist and a scumbucket and, I hope he rots in prison. That doesn't define men, but that seems to be the measuring stick we're heading towards. And guys, if you are getting something out of this conversation, be sure and hit that like button, leave us a comment, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, wherever you are. I love to hear what you guys have to say. Here is the question of the show. How would you define masculinity, guys? Comment below, shout it out in the feedback. I want to know how you define masculinity. Right? We've kicked around some ideas on the show today. Maybe you agree with us, maybe you don't agree with us. I want to hear your take on it. How do you define masculinity? Shout it out. Let us hear, join the conversation. So I was reading one of your Facebook posts and you posed an interesting question that I'd love for you to share a little bit on. How much work are you putting into enhancing your relationship on a regular basis compared to the other areas of your life? Are you spending even 10% working to improve it compared to how much time you spend in the gym? How about compared to moving forward in your business or career? So tell us about your experience in helping men with this particular question, because this is a really, really valid question. I was reading on your Facebook and it's like, man, that is just like a home run kind of question right there.
Yeah, it's super important. And that's one of the one of the top principles that I kind of like to hammer home with people is, we grow up, we know that to be in shape or be healthy, you got to go to the gym, you got to eat healthy, you got to constantly work on it. If you don't, things slide towards the negative. In your business or your career, if you don't work and you're not constantly moving forward, your business fails, you get fired, whatever, you don't move forward. And so we spend a lot of active work in those areas, but very few people are spending active work on their relationships. And I think it's because we've been taught that it's all about love and attraction and your soulmate and kind of all these Hollywood things that we learned growing up. And so we think, oh, if there's love or an attraction involved, like these other principles will kind of take care of themselves. And that's just, it's not the case. And you're going to learn it either the hard way, or you can kind of learn it and be proactive about it. But a lot of people, and again, this is another reason why I wanted to work with entrepreneurs, is because they are so focused and driven on their, on their business, on their career. And they know that it's going to take a lot of work to succeed in that area. But then they spend like 90, 100% of their energy there, and they don't save any for their relationship. Like I know so many people who are big on personal development, but not on what I call relationship development. So relationship development is basically taking principles of personal development, of constantly improving, learning, and that sort of stuff, and applying it into your relationship. So that's something that I probably still don't do enough of. We didn't do any of it really consciously or proactively for a long time. But when we did, again, that kind of shift a couple of years ago, along with kind of understanding the masculine and feminine dynamics, has made a huge difference for us. And so, for us, it's we aren't great about doing it every month. We're not perfect, but I came up with this list of, okay, every month we're going to try and read a book together, some sort of relationship-based book, and kind of discuss it together. That's a huge one. And like most people, when they hear that, like even our friends are like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy. And I'm like,
that's really a pretty cool idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like, that's a really easy one, right? A book is $10 on Amazon. There's so many good ones that you can read together, discuss. And then another one is like, we get each other a random gift each month. It could be something real small, $5, could be 100, whatever, but no reason. And that kind of, each of these things almost kind of, it moves you forward together, but it also kind of touches on your love languages, which is a whole nother kind of really important thing to get into. But, it's doing that. It's spending quality time together. So, a lot of people have date night, right? That's one kind of level to it. Another is, trying to spend a weekend away, just the two of you every month or 2 or 3, or kind of what works for you. But just really kind of implementing these like conscious, proactive things to move your relationship forward that very few people do, because, we're taught kind of growing up, or not taught that, that you need to do these things. Like how many of us really saw our parents actively like reading a book together and discussing it? Probably like 0.1% of the population. And so there's just been this kind of like massive idea that a lot of us subconsciously believe is like, oh, like, if we're nice to each other and we spend time together, and we love each other and are attracted to each other, like that'll take care of it. And it's, 50% divorce rates say otherwise. So there's so much out there and so much available now these days, like in the times we're living in, that there's no excuse not to take advantage of some of those resources and work on them just as you would your health and fitness or your business and career.
What is next for Bradley Roth?
I have kind of I have a lot of different ideas, but the two kind of main pillars I'm working on is the Not Most People brand, which right now the podcast is the base of, but there's apparel coming, communities, stuff like that. And then with the relationship coaching right now, it's one-on-one focus with entrepreneurs or one-on-two, like if it's the couple. But I want to make that, I want to make it more accessible to everyone, because that is kind of like not really accessible to everyone necessarily. It's kind of high ticket, very individualized attention and that sort of thing. So I want to create group coaching and courses and other things around it, and around masculinity and that sort of thing too. That's kind of my other, like within the relationship scope of things, I have the people who are in long-term relationships, the entrepreneurs. But that other area that I'm passionate about, because I was there too, is teaching men, let's say from 20 to 30, what it really means to be masculine and how to develop that. So that's another area that I would really like to create tools and content and resources for.
Now, you have a great website, bradleyroth.com, I believe. We have that we'll share here if you're watching on the video. There it is.
There it is.
There we go. I like the ticker on the top of it. Guys,
Thank
that's
you.
bradleyroth.com. If you're listening on the podcast, you can check out Brad there, and his blog is linked, his podcast is linked. Brad, is this the best place to find you, or do you have other means? I saw you're on Facebook. Where is the best place for people to reach out and get in contact with you, and maybe they need some help and maybe they want to talk to you? Is this the best place to go, or tell us?
Yeah, like I said, I still got to do some finishing touches on the website, so don't judge it too hard. But a really easy way to reach me is Instagram. So that's at Bradley_Roth on Instagram, or Bradley Roth on Facebook, and hit me up on Messenger. I'm pretty active on Messenger as well. And then notmostpeople.net for everything kind of Not Most People and podcast related as well.
Okay. Now, guys, we have unpacked a whole lot of ideas here. We've dove into some relationship stuff. We've dove into just some masculinity things. Listen to the episode a second time if you need to. Go check out bradleyroth.com and see what Bradley is doing over there. Guys, your relationship, your masculinity is critical to it. Okay? It is a core foundational element. Bradley is coaching with successful entrepreneurs who live in a lot of stress. We've reiterated it on this podcast many times in the past. Your masculinity is key to helping your relationship be successful if that is a goal for you. So re-listen to it, isolate it, tell us what you think of the podcast and what you think of this episode. Guys, thanks so much for your time. Brad, thanks for taking the time to be here. I told you I'd end up calling you Brad before it was over. Sorry about that.
It's all good.
Guys, be better tomorrow because of what you do today, and we'll see you next time.
This has been the Fallible Man Podcast, your home for everything man, husband, and father. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a show. Head over to www.thefallibleman.com for more content and get your own Fallible Man gear.